If you're standing in the backyard with a telescope on your mind and wondering whether you should spend a chunk of your hobby budget on a motorized mount, I get it. You've probably seen a dozen YouTube videos promising the perfect setup, and you're worried about ending up with a piece of equipment that sits heavy on the table, barely tracks, or forces you to wrestle with cables every night. You want to know if the Celestron Advanced VX computerized mount actually delivers the stability and tracking you need without turning your observing sessions into a logistics nightmare. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. Let's talk about the kind of night sky work that most amateur astronomers actually do. Most people who buy a mount like this are not after a tiny backyard planetary setup that they'll only use a handful of times a year. They're the ones who want to swing a 10-inch or larger refractor, or a compact Newtonian, and be able to lock onto faint deep sky objects for an hour or more without the whole thing wobbling. They also want to be able to switch between a casual lunar view, a solar session, and sidereal tracking for galaxies without rebalancing every time. That's a tall order for cheaper Altaz mounts, which is why many people move up to an equatorial platform like the Advanced VX. First thing you'll notice is the overall heft. At £47, the whole kit mount plus tripod feels solid the moment you set it down. The 2-inch stainless steel legs are noticeably thicker than the aluminum legs you see on budget rigs, and that mass translates directly into superior stability when you're tracking a faint nebula for 30 minutes. In practice, it means the mount won't start to drift after you've spent the time to polar align it, something that a lot of reviewers complain about with lighter kits. If you've ever been frustrated by a mount that tips over when you add a heavier telescope, this weight will feel reassuring rather than burdensome. Weight capacity is the next important metric. The Advanced VX can hold up to 30 pounds, which comfortably accommodates most mid-size telescopes. Think 12-inch Dobsonians, 10-inch SCTs, and even a few small motorized go-to accessories. If you plan to add a focal reducer, a motorized focuser, or a camera for deep sky imaging, you'll still be within the safe range. In real-world observing sessions, that capacity means you can push the mount a bit harder on the tracking side without fearing that the gears will slip under load. Now, the advanced tracking feature is where the mount really starts to differentiate itself. It offers sidereal, solar, and lunar rates, so you can switch from hunting for Jupiter to following the sun's path without manually dialing new speeds. For a backyard observer, the practical benefit is simple. You set the rate, press start, and the mount does the heavy lifting. The tracking is not perfect. No hobby-grade mount can claim zero drift, but the reported performance is good enough that you can stack multiple 30-second exposures on a DSLR without the stars elongating too much. That's a huge time saver compared to manual nudging. The Nexstar Plus hand controller is another piece that gets talked about a lot. It's not just a remote, it holds a database of over 40,000 objects, from Messier catalog entries to bright stars and deep sky galaxies. What matters in daily use is how the device feels when you're actually scrolling through that list at the edge of the night. The controller's rotary knob is tactile enough to use with gloved hands, and the screen is readable even in low light. The biggest practical strength here is that you can go to a target and have the mount finish the alignment, which cuts down the setup time dramatically. I've seen hobbyists who would otherwise spend 20 to 30 minutes fine-tuning a polar alignment get that done in half the time with the Nexstar Plus. But the mount isn't without its trade-offs. The first is portability. At £47, you're looking at a dedicated vehicle or a sturdy roof rack if you want to bring it to a darksite camp. Unpacking, loading, and unloading will take longer than with a lighter, more compact unit. If you're the type who packs up and heads out to a different field every weekend, you may find the extra weight a deterrent. The legs are solid, yet they're not as quick adjust as some telescopic leg designs. You'll need a wrench to change the leg height, and that can be a pain in a hurry. Another practical weakness surfaces if you are relatively new to equatorial mounts. The latitude adjustment range of 7 to 77 degrees covers most inhabited latitudes, but it does require you to set the mount's angle accurately to avoid drift. The process can be a bit fiddly the first few times, especially if you're using the hand controller without a polar scope. For beginners, the learning curve is steeper than with a point-and-shoot Altaz platform, and you'll need to spend a night or two getting comfortable with the polar alignment routine. So, who should really consider the Advanced VX? If you own or are planning to own a